Hello everyone, thank you for tuning in and watching. This is a restoration of an old school Daisy 1200 Powerline. It's an old school BB gun, uses CO2 propellant. So this was me tearing down the gun initially and scrubbing everything down, soap and water, making sure to be gentle. There's not many parts available for these guns anymore, so you kind of get what you can get. If not, I had to actually make a part, which I'll lead to later on in the video. But that's the gun tore down, disassembled, oiled, and reconditioned. Basically, you're going to use just a typical gun cleaning kit, same as normal. Kind of get that rust off there. I had to kind of use a Dremel to grind some of the deep rust off there. So there it is. The Daisy Powerline 1200 was completely restored, refinished. There's a good picture of it torn down completely, ready to go for reassembly. Alright everyone, so here we go. Putting the gun back together. I use kind of a still frame motion to kind of capture bits and pieces of it. Hopefully this will help you guys out with your Daisy Powerline 1200 rebuild. Once you get to this point, if there's anything that you have, please leave a question below and I'll do my best to kind of answer it. But again, with this stop frame technology sort of video, if you get stuck on a spot there, it should help you kind of pinpoint that and pause it and see how things get put back together. Took me a couple tries, honestly, just because there was no manual to this. It was kind of just breaking it down and remembering it. I took pictures along the way, too, to kind of help out as reference, but a little bit of trial and error. So right here is really what took me the most time. Not being familiar with the gun, I didn't realize there was an actual piece at the end of the barrel. It's a sort of plastic round piece that holds that spring in there. And it prevents it from coming back out. So without that being in there, you're just going to fight and struggle like I did for a little bit. It's a pretty vital piece. So right here, I kind of gave up for a little bit and did some research. And what I found was an actual picture of that piece right here. With no information from Daisy or parts diagram or anything like that, I had to fabricate my own piece to get it to fit, to keep that spring from pushing back out. So what I did was take a piece of plastic dowel style tubing. It had a hole in the middle that way that the BB shaft can push outward. And all I did was take a Dremel and round off the edges to get it to fit in there properly. That's a photo of it when it was done. And it slides right into the receiver and pushes that spring back and holds that pressure there and keeps it from flying out. So that was the last missing piece of the puzzle with this gun. And they're showing what it looks like through the barrel. Here's a good side-by-side picture of the finished product on the left and what I started with on the right. Ready to go. Now pretty much with that last piece, I had everything to put the gun back together. Make sure everything was clear of debris. You don't want anything in there during reassembly. Make sure everything's oiled up properly too. Go through the motions with everything, the trigger, the slides. Make sure you have proper clearances. Okay, so kind of pick off to where I left off in that previous short video. With that vital piece that I made there, here's where I would have continued. So there it goes in there. That's a good look at it. A little bit blurry. You can kind of see how it works. You want to put the shorter end towards the front of the barrel, the longer end to slide over the shaft where the BBs exit. Make sure you give it a little coating of WD-40 or gun oil or something like that, just to make sure that if it does have to rotate, it doesn't get set in there. And it leaves some lubrication for the shaft to kind of push outward, that you'll see later. So that's all there is to that part. That's what held that spring in. And literally once you put the other side of the barrel on top of that, which I'm about to do right now, and screw down, that spring cannot exit anymore. It's also important to remember where you put the correct screws. I believe there's 3 or 4 different sizes to this gun here, with the medium sized screw kind of going in the front of the barrel, and then the 2 smaller ones towards the back there. So just kind of another trial and error sort of thing as you're breaking this down and rebuilding it. Just checking the action. That's the important part right there, is that shaft, the BB shaft, exits the gun when you're cocking it from the bottom there. And just kind of doing a few dry fires to make sure the functionality is there. Always, like I said earlier, lube it up really good. Be generous with that oil. Make sure everything, the metal on metal contact, has some protection there. Okay, so the next step here is kind of put on that forward grip. The plastic cover just slides right over the top of the trigger and is held in place by just one tiny Phillips screw. So when I talk about reconditioning this gun real quick, I didn't do a full recondition of, sanding and repainting and refinishing the outside. Since it's kind of a classic, I wanted to kind of keep that look to it. It's kind of that weathered look that's been used and abused, but also restore the finish with a nice shine, a nice clean. Keep it all original, so to speak. To me, it's kind of more valuable that way. Okay, so from here I flipped it over to the other side, and there's the other small tiny screw. These two tiny screws will go on the back, one on the left, one on the right, both Phillips. So the part I am taking a look at here right now is the rear sights. And on top, it's held in place with a flathead screw. This is probably the biggest screw on the gun. So I'm just checking the operation right here. If you turn it counterclockwise, it's gonna push that rear sight upward and kind of give you a downward angle if you're shooting a little bit too high. So then I'm playing with it the other direction, going clockwise and bringing that rear sight back down. The part I don't show you below that, I did take that apart and put it back together. There's actually a spring underneath that. That's what pushes it up and down as you turn the screw. The spring kind of looks like a little tornado. So that's one thing that popped out of the gun during reassembly that I took a while to find. But once I did, I realized where it went and I put it back in. So I didn't show that. All right, so moving forward, I talked about on this gun, you load the BBs from the back there. What would normally be like the hammer style on an old school cowboy gun is actually the lever revealing a hole to put the BBs in. So you just kind of slide that to the right. Make sure you have the gun pointed downward. Obviously, gravity will be your best friend with this, and do not overload it. Check the window on top there to make sure the BBs are actually going in. This gun previously did not have visibility. That's how dirty the window was on top. So I had to give that a good cleaning to make sure that we could see how much was inside. And just test fitting that old CO2 cartridge in there. Make sure everything goes back together correctly. Always righty-tighty, lefty-loosey with that CO2 pin on the bottom. Make sure you give that a good coating of like WD-40. That's pretty important because with the gun being this old, it kind of got stuck. And as you'll see later on in the video what happened with my first attempt at putting a new CO2 cartridge back in. Hey, once again, guys, thanks for tuning in. If you made it this far, I really appreciate it. It's got a few more pieces left. We're almost there. All right, so the left side of that hand grip goes back on. Slides right back in there. And it's a finished product. All right, everyone, so here's a good picture of the finished product all ready to go. That's all the stuff you're going to need to get this thing up and running again. So here's me just breaking it down for you. You're going to take a piece of the hand grip off right there. Just pops right out. It's got a dummy screw on top. Just lifts right up. Slides right out. It's got the old CO2 cartridge in there. Just to kind of mock it up to make sure everything fit properly as I put it back together. So you're going to take that bottom latch right there and spin it counterclockwise to loosen that up. Back that screw out all the way. CO2 cartridge pulls down and out. Release that, take that out of there. You're going to grab your new CO2 cartridge right there. I prefer Crosman CO2 over Daisy. It just seems to work a little bit better, much better propellant. So that's going to slide right up in there. I recommend you put a little bit of oil on it. This is kind of a trial phase that I was doing. You're going to see what happens here. This is what not to do. I push it up a little bit too slow. And boom, there goes the CO2. Wasted a whole canister of CO2 right there. But that's how you live and learn. Okay, so with the blooper reel out of the way, we're going to show you the right way to do it. Put in the right canister there. Always put some grease on the tip of that thing to make sure that it gets up in there correctly. That's what she said. No dirty puns intended. That's how you should do it to get that seal good. So that's me with the new CO2 cartridge up there. Got the Crosman BBs ready to go there too. Brand new package, busting it open. Gonna dump a few in there. I'm not sure the capacity of this BB gun itself. Just kind of pour BBs in the hole in the back until you really feel not a lot of resistance, but you can start to feel that the gun, if you shake it, it's pretty full. You don't want to overload it. You don't want to get them things jammed up in there. I think that's probably what happened with this piece, was that due to neglect and just overloading over a long period of time sitting, it kind of gunked it up. So be mindful of that. Put a few in there, not too much. So you're going to put them through the back here. All right, that's all there is to it. Ready to go. Okay guys, so one thing I forgot to mention when putting this back together here, when you put in the CO2 cartridge right here, make sure you put in some sort of silicone lubricant or grease to go up in here, just to make the gun function better. Also to create a better seal for the CO2 to go up in the propellant through the needle. So that's one thing I forgot, and I lost the CO2 cartridge upon putting it in. So remedied that, put that back in. Also too, when you put it in, make sure you slide this lever forward to kind of close the valve in here. If it's slid backwards here, it's going to release all that propellant out and you're going to lose another cartridge that way. So trial and error. Here we go. Put the cover back on. Let's go for a test shot here. Okay, so we have functionability. Gonna get some targets. All right, guys, I'm back at the target set up here. Before we start, looks like it's a nice sunny day out here to shoot this Daisy Powerline 1200 classic model right there, 1200. Got it all rebuilt, ready to go. I'm gonna get it dialed in. Before I begin, I want to just remind you guys that this is an object that could potentially hurt you or somebody. So treat it with caution. Safety is paramount using this thing. Just make sure there's nothing around where you're pointing this or behind it or anything like that. So I just want to get that out of the way. All right, be safe. Let's have some fun. Seems to be like shooting a little bit to the left. Yeah, unfortunately, director's cut, just like my camera tripod, was shifting to the left. All right, now that we got that fixed, I don't know if you guys could hear, but I really like this gun. It's got a nice deep tone to it. It's a lot older than any of the other guns I've had before. It's got a longer barrel, so to me, it's got a nice deeper sound. It's one of the things I really like about this. But at this point, it wasn't shooting very straight, and here's what I discovered. You can see this. It's not very good. It's pulling to the left, but the reason being is that forward sight, it's hard to see in this, but it looks like it was dropped. The rear sight's kind of got some damage, but can't get it on camera. Forward sight looks like it was kind of dropped, and it's actually pointing towards the left. It's hard to say, but yeah. So I think that's the best we can do with this condition. But it's been fun. Just want to thank you guys for watching. That's the end result. And if you have any questions or comments, please comment below. Thank you for tuning in. Remember to like and subscribe this video. This is a new one, kind of getting started doing this, but it's going to be more good stuff to come. So thank you for watching again, and you guys have a good day.